So in essence, we're everything that connects publisher supply to retail demand.
We are getting ready for a cookieless future. How do you see that? How will that impact marketers?
Our approach is to have first-party data on the publisher, first-party data on the retailer where that's possible, and then to be in a position where we can connect those in a compliant and consent-driven way.
How do you see particular aspects of German e-commerce?
There's a lot of growth potential still within the German market.
Hi there and welcome to the E-commerce Germany News Podcast. I'm your host, Efe von Thenen. Joining the conversation today is Giles Longhurst. He's the Managing Director of Connexity for the markets APAC and EMEA. Among many things, Giles and I will tap into a cookieless feature, being the bridge between the publisher and the retail side, and also expansion into the German market. Giles, I know you took a flight and it's been a couple of hours of your journey coming here. We do appreciate it. Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for the invite. So Giles Longhurst, I'm Managing Director for Connexity for EMEA and APAC. We are the commerce division of Taboola. So in essence, we're everything that connects publisher supply to retail demand. We've been operating as a business for around 20 years in the e-commerce and online digital marketing space. Very much that's a growing area for us within the Taboola broader business line.
And you also have a pretty solid track record as an industry expert. Could you tell us a little bit about all the things you've done?
Yeah, so a little bit of background, and it goes back some time. So very much the move from analog to digital was very much the start of my career. So working at the Daily Mail Group, really on the advertising side on TV, launching digital TV channels, and then very much the online marketing growth came. Google came into play and started showing really solid growth signs in the early 2000s. Stayed within that business as we launched multiple websites, but then saw an opportunity to move into more content and SEO. Moved into a company called John Wiley & Sons, which is a big publisher, and they own a technology business that was building websites, creating content for major travel companies, KLM, Air France, BA, and we were in essence building out that content offering to the travel clients. That then business got bought, all of the kind of content within it got bought within Google's Google Maps offering, and that was an opportunity to move on. And I moved to within the data analytics space. So within Experian Marketing Services, running all of their insights and analytics offerings, and supporting really across a breadth of retail, insurance, and other sectors as well. And then finally moved from the data analytics side into e-commerce to join Connexity.
Yeah. How did you make the decision to join Connexity? How come?
I think seeing the amount and importance of that data and insights within retail businesses, so the granularity of metrics that they required to really drill into events like Black Friday and really understand how that was going to deliver performance over the coming years.
Yeah. You're the type of person that delves into the data and takes a look at the insights and tries to make sense of it and develops a strategy based on the data.
Yeah.
How long have you been at Connexity now?
So 5 years now.
Okay.
So 5 years at Connexity, and then 2 years now within the broader Taboola business as well.
Yeah, after the merger.
Yeah, exactly.
Giles, do you want to tell us a little bit about the merger with Taboola?
Yeah, sure. So we were a private equity company, owned out of San Francisco, and in essence we were looking into the market. We're seeing some really strong growth. We'd acquired the Skimlinks business back in 2020, and that really gave us access to a huge range of new editorial sort of commerce supply within top tier publishers globally. And then as we went into that sort of next phase of growth through the first stages of the pandemic, you start off thinking, right, how's this 2020 going to go? And then, really, absolutely lifted through the roof from an e-commerce perspective. Lots of businesses were looking at e-commerce opportunities, and we got into a process with, a number of different companies, and Taboola, acquired us September 2021. Yeah. So, really, really positive. I mean, they've got massive scale, 500 million daily uniques, if you like, across the globe. They've got a big footprint that we can then access to expand into new markets, and they've got very strong, technical capabilities, which allows us to start testing areas within more of the machine learning and generative AI as well. So big opportunity for us, and sort of, they see commerce as a core pillar within the overall business.
Yeah, but probably takes a while to integrate all these systems with yours. So, but the potential is huge.
Yeah, I'd say we're through the first phase of things not going as quickly as we'd like them to. And now we're into the phase where, we're starting to see some real, products launched, on partners and delivering results as well. Still a long way to go, but it's definitely in the zone where we're really starting to see some momentum.
So did you also have several different roles within the organization, or have you started as the managing director of?
Yeah, so I report into the, in essence, the CEO of Connexity, Bill Glass, and he reports into the COO of Taboola. So we're still operating as a division of, but very much, I sort of sit within that leadership structure of both Connexity and within the Taboola organization as well. So we're sort of somewhat matrixed in how we're set up, but it's working well. It's allowing us to focus on the things that we know are going to drive our business growth, which is what the acquisition was for. They can focus on the core, Taboola, offerings, and then where we see real opportunity in the middle, then we can double down and bring teams together that work on those specific products, which is what we're starting to see, the momentum on now.
Sounds great, and also I do know from our research a little bit that you're responsible for several markets. You want to tell us a little bit about which markets do you oversee?
For sure. Yeah, so in Europe, sort of, the order of scale is Germany, UK, France, and Italy. That's kind of where we're focused. We're now starting to do some work in Spain as well, and we're also within a sort of EMEA region. Israel is one of the markets that we're launching some of our editorial commerce offerings. And then outside of EMEA, from an APAC perspective, Australia is where we originally had a presence, not on the ground, but a presence in terms of a product offering. We've now put people on the ground in that market, or hired people in Sydney and Melbourne to support that market. The same in India, just very recently in Japan, Bangkok, which covers Singapore, Thailand, and Greater China as well. So very much kind of early stages in most of the APAC markets, but picking up on the momentum that we're seeing there, and seeing the benefits of having local people in local markets with all of that knowledge that they can bring back to the sort of head offices and improve the way we think about product development, not just sort of product development for that region, but how can learnings from India as a mobile first market help us think about what we're doing in Europe as well.
It's a huge advantage at the same time.
Right? It's just making sure you got the right processes to take that information on board as well.
Giles, how many direct reports do you have? It's also interesting for me.
So eight direct reports right now, really across the sort of commercial organization. So we are generally, as a business, we have sort of publisher and merchant focused teams. The Connexity business was very much merchant first. We've always been, really since the 2000s, had direct relationships with online retailers.
Yeah.
But the publisher supply is really how we, that's the offering we take to the retailers, is to have unique long-term partnerships with the publishers.
Yeah.
So having that combination of publisher team with a focused roadmap and merchant team with a focused roadmap is how we sort of operate as a business. And then sort of non-direct is then very much within the sort of operational sides, and the G&A side of the business is the other part of the reporting lines that I have. So sort of people responsibility as well as commercial responsibility.
Yeah, sounds very extensive when I listen to you talk about all these markets. And what I want to get to Connexity and talk about Connexity as a whole and what the company does. But before we get there, I want to take the chance because we really appreciate you being here. And also I want to ask you, throughout the last 5 years at Connexity, you've also been exposed to consumer behavior and changes. You've lived through Corona. You had probably had some tailwind because of the e-commerce component. And then we have the inflation crisis, all kinds of things happening in e-commerce. So one thing that really is interesting, especially talking to you that oversees several markets, like there are nuances and particularities per each market, right? So how do you see particularities for Germany, for example? Because you're sitting with the e-commerce Germany news podcast. How do you see particular aspects of German e-commerce? How's the evolution?
Yeah, I mean, maybe from a trend perspective, there's a lot of growth potential still within the German market, whereas you might say that UK and US are at a more mature state right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I think the numbers for 2024 is 140 billion of GMS from for retailers in the German market alone. So I think there's huge opportunity to come. The sort of tricky part is there is a category by category dynamic going on like right now, which has been in every market, but fashion's tough right now. So you sort of what do we expect to see within the market, and where will those growth trends come from? But they certainly are underpinning everything is that growth. From a sort of, I guess, from a cultural doing business perspective, I would say that the sort of key things within the German market, it's even more data driven than the rest of Europe. So you start with the data, you start with the relationships, you build those relationships, and you move at a sensible pace that allows everyone to come on board and see the value before you then extend into the next offering.
Also, I can imagine that Germans are a bit more data privacy minded, if you will. Yeah,
for sure. So I think that combination of caring for the data and what it means from an insights perspective, but absolutely, the privacy side comes from Europe and kind of probably comes from Germany. And for us, we've always had a business in Germany for 20 years, so it's been something we've been very cognizant of, and that actually helps us think about what's happening in other markets. I mean, the US is moving in a similar path, state by state at the moment, and so that helps us as a business to think about how we evolve our own, privacy and data usage policies as well. So it's it's a benefit as well as something you have to get very, very clear.
Talking about data privacy, we all know that there are going to be some changes with cookieless. We are getting ready for a cookieless future. How do you see that? How will that impact marketers?
It definitely makes it harder. I don't think we want to sort of really say that, but I think that's the reality of the market. It's not so much the marketing on one specific site or one specific retailer. It's how we then expand that to be able to cover, and market to an audience, really wherever they are in that journey. How do we hit them or touch them in different points of that journey becomes more difficult. So I think that's the bit that everyone's trying to work out, whether it's Google and the privacy sandbox, or whether it's contextual advertising that a number of players are focusing on. From our perspective, I think our approach is to have first-party data on the publisher, first-party data on the retailer where that's possible, and then to be in a position where we can connect those in a compliant and consent-driven way, and utilize how people are consuming, readership data across all of the sort of publisher network globally to really understand this audience that's reading this topic on entertainment or fashion or cooking. Interest-based. How can we connect the people reading something around recipes on a certain news site or editorial site? How can we connect that to products that they would be interested to buy in a way that doesn't sort of break the user experience, feels seamless to the way that they're consuming content and sort of going about living their lives.
Yeah, inevitably you don't want to interrupt the user by giving them something completely irrelevant or meaningless. I'm a huge fan of personalized advertisement because I think it actually helps people make good decisions by leveraging the data that they willingly shared with you. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you go back to the internet doesn't really work unless there's advertising or subscriptions. So it's got to be a mix of those two worlds. It's just trying to find a rebalance of what feels right to the consumer is, I think, what the next few years are going to be about.
Recently, I went to my Facebook and I got the notification that, hey, you can continue using Facebook for €8 per month or something without ads, or you can continue using it for free. I think also there have been some surveys on LinkedIn and stuff. I don't know the numbers, but I can imagine many people would prefer to use it for free and just share their data and see some advertisement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think I guess it depends on which app you're using or which website you're using and what you're using it for. If it's very kind of instant and on the go, and I want to find out the best way to get from Berlin Airport to the location here, then ads popping up is not what I want. But if I'm reading an article and I'm relaxed and I'm thinking about sort of wider topics, then of course,
what's your intention?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And we've talked about consumer behavior, and also you work with retailers. You work with merchants that sell to end customers. Do you see certain trends, like let's say success factors for 2024, 2024? What are like the top categories you would say, like it's good to tap into it? These are the tips that you can give to the merchants.
Yeah, trends, looking at trends for next year, I think of course the social commerce trend is absolutely going to be front and center. So there's lots of new formats. The need for high quality engaging video is continuing to grow. So I think we see a kind of a strong focus there. We have a business line within the US market which we're looking to bring to Europe, which is called Shop Your Likes, which is an influencer community, and that hits on a lot.
What's it called again?
Shop Your Likes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's in essence a business that connects the supply that we'll find within Instagram, YouTube, but connecting that to the retail supply. But it kind of gives a very specific type of audience and specific type of content that we're providing as well. So I think that's one trend for sure. I think there's definitely a focus on generative AI and being in a position to test new formats. So creative formats generated on the fly using first-party data or the data that you're accessing within those campaigns is a key way for us to try and be in a position to find different types of audience segment, to find new customers, etc. So I think that's an important one.
Do you think many retailers are already tapping into that, or do they need much more ramp-up time to get there?
I think the biggest ones definitely are. I think there's a lot of that going on, and it's not that different to some of the work that was being done in email marketing 15 years ago. It's just I suppose it's the speed and the real-time nature of how those creative formats are being pulled together is really the difference. Rather than having a set of templates, you've now got something that's being generated right there based on the data that the system is looking at. So I think the big guys are testing it, and then sort of mid-tier are definitely working with partners. It's core within many of the platforms, such as Facebook, within Google's PMax. Those kind of capabilities are being tested all the time. So I think it is available to all. I guess it's knowing how much control you have over that, and how much is kind of managed by the big tech companies, and how much is managed by the marketing team themselves, which is that's the challenge I suppose every business is working on, is how much they use the sort of underlying assets that are available versus having something more tailored to their specific needs.
Especially something like PMax is something like a black box. So you give your product feed, and then Google decides where to put the products, and I feel like the control over the kind of campaigns you run is like getting less and less, and you just like dump more of the decision-making power to the AI algorithms.
Yeah, and I think the benefit there is, of course, that you couldn't run across multiple channels at all times. The risk, as you say, is you lose some of the understanding of exactly what's going on and where the spend's going. So I suppose it allows a capability to be available to to mass marketing, if you like, which I think is good. But how do you actually then feel like you're in a position to control that and sort of not become overly invested in it? And I think that's where maybe the sort of channel diversification part sort of comes into it as well, is making sure that you're not overly reliant on
one channel,
two channels, both because of the points you mentioned, but also because you then end up in the efficiency of those channels changes over time because the competition grows. And then I suppose you lose some of the first mover advantage. So you're focusing too heavily here, and you're not testing over here where you might get incremental benefit than what you're testing within those core standard channels, if you like.
Okay, so those are the takeaways that you can give to retailers for 2024.
Yeah, I mean one more I might add, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
would be sort of the focus that we've seen is a strong focus in the last 24 months, I'd say, in profitability focused metrics. So whereas we talked before about cost of sale KPIs or ROAS targets, now the focus is very much moving towards an idea of profitability, or a fully baked kind of ROI where everything's being mapped into that. And that takes quite a lot of sophistication from the business to know how to bake all of those things into that metric and really understand whether it's delivering bottom line performance. But if you get it right, then it takes a lot of pressure off the marketing team, because you're now, it's hitting the numbers that the CFO cares most about. And then, that potentially unlocks budgets that don't really need to be reviewed in quite the same way as they did before. So I think that's a big opportunity that we see sort of coming through, is those custom KPIs that are sort of mapped to the needs of that business.
Yeah. What are some of those metrics that you can maybe refer to? Is it like, do you think there's more of an emphasis on average order value and similar metrics?
I mean, average order value, I think, is one of those metrics that every retailer, whatever phase of its evolution, is always trying to notch up by a few percentage points, every year, and come up with, tests and ways to improve that and make consumers, add that extra piece to the basket. And I think there's a lot more technology that helps you do that. So I think that's kind of it's almost a key tenet of retailing. Frequency of purchase would be the other one. It's how can I make someone come back more often,
recurring
with less effort, with less marketing budget, because of the fact that that's going to drive those profitability metrics as well. So I think those are key metrics, but I think they're kind of almost like they're the sort of foundations of retailing in some ways.
I think this is a great segue to get to Connexity, because I think all these things that we've been talking about, especially the metrics that retailers have to watch out about, I think I think it would be nice to have an introduction to Connexity, like to really break it down, boil it down to a couple of sentences. What is Connexity? What do you guys do? How do you help retailers? How do you take advantage of data, be the link between the publisher side and the retailer side?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the best way to start is to say we're a supply and demand network. So we have long-term relationships on the publisher side. We have long-term relationships on the retailer side. So that's our main premise, is to have scale on both sides. All boats rise if we get that right. Today we deliver about 5 billion in GMS to our retailers globally. So that's where we're driving specific sales through our channels, conversions to those retailers. From a supply perspective, it's important to have diversification, as I think I've sort of referenced. We start with some of the core channels, some of the search channels that we have access to. So that's an important part, as well as shopping marketplace, shopping price comparison, editorial content within major publishers. And then as we think about some of the elements that have become available through the Taboola acquisition, is access to native display placements that we can access and plug in those product feeds into those ad units. And then on top of that, and sort of a new area that we're focusing on within the business is this supply within mobile phone manufacturers. So the Oppo, the Realme, the Xiaomi. So
like OEM.
Exactly, yeah. OEM. So they're in essence looking for ways to engage user groups with content. Taboola Network has access to that content to then be able to distribute that and provide that content to publishers to drive more engagement within their experiences. And then within that, there's a huge audience that is potential to drive to the publisher and drive through advertising to the retailer as well. So think about that as a high impact advertising placement on a mobile device, which is focusing on key tentpole events, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Singles Day, ways to sort of drive specific traffic through to retailers. So it's sort of an ecosystem that works for all. So for the publisher, they get their content distributed onto mobile devices. For the mobile device manufacturer, they get this content to drive engagement, and for the retailer, they get a new audience that they can't engage with through other media.
To make this a little bit more tangible for those of us that might not have heard of Connexity before, can you walk us through some of the client cases that you have, or maybe case studies that you might have, or known brands that tapped into Connexity and profited from it?
Yeah. I think maybe I'll start with just a little bit of sort of the types of sort of category that work, and then maybe I'll dig into a couple in a little bit more detail. So we work best within quite a range of categories, but certainly within home and garden. You might think in Germany that'd be like a Hofner or someone like those lines. Yeah. Within beauty, then you've got the likes of Douglas and Perfume Dreams would be kind of examples within that sector.
Flaconi,
exactly. So all those kind of brands within fashion. About You, Engelhorn would be good examples within that sector. And then really the area we've seen a lot of growth is the big marketplaces. So the likes of the Etsy's, the AliExpresses, eBay's. So they're all sort of key growth areas that we're seeing opportunity within as well. So yeah.
How about brands like Temu that are expanding in Germany?
We have seen quite a lot of interest there. I mean, I think AliExpress would probably class them as one in their line of sight.
Okay.
So I think there's opportunities for sure. I mean, I think we work with a good core set of retailers across the German market, but there's always more opportunity for us to grow.
Yeah. So do you have maybe smaller examples that you work with, or what's the size that you ideally have?
Yeah, I mean, typically it's merchants with large feeds, so 1,000, 10,000 SKUs that they would have access to. They're typically the ones that are strongest, but that doesn't mean that mattress manufacturers such as Bet1, they will work extremely well as well, and they'll have
I think they have like
hundreds of SKUs or 50 SKUs. So those ones work really well, and typically if it's lower number of SKUs, then that average order value is a lot higher, and that just obviously allows the buying power within the different publisher sites as well.
Let's assume Bet1 establish a cooperation with Connexity. What are the steps you take to make them successful?
Yeah, so a lot of onboarding. So we have strong account management. We have data operations, engineering teams. But really the first thing, once the contract's in place and everyone's happy and we've got that set, we'll agree what the goals are. What do they need to achieve in terms of a ROAS target, cost of sale target, a POAS target? We'll agree that. We'll then onboard their feed of products. So we'll ingest that into our system. We'll then enrich that if we need to enrich that with additional metadata. And then we'll move into starting to price the campaign. We'll start off with certain publisher sources and channels, and then we'll expand that as the campaign ramps up. We have a very much a kind of, I suppose, an ideal customer setup, which we think about in terms of how we ramp the campaign. So we're making sure that we're being we're twisting things in the right way and allowing that campaign room to grow, and we're making sure that we're giving an understanding exactly what prices we need to reach, what bids we need to reach within the auctions to be able to win that traffic. And then, of course, from an account management perspective, we'll be having weekly check-ins to ensure that we really understand how the performance looks on their end as well as our end. And I think that the sort of tracking and attribution come in here to a degree as well. So when it comes to tracking, one of the big focus areas for us is having the merchant source of truth. So in essence, that's their view of the world. So it's all very well to talk about first click, last click, multi-touch, whatever it might be. But it's what we really care about is what do they believe? What do they believe we've driven as a marketing platform? Because that's in essence how they're going to judge us in the long term. So getting that right and doing side by side analysis of what we're seeing in terms of performance and what they're seeing is the best way to set up a long-term partnership, because there's no blurred lines going on.
But most of your clients are longer-term partners, right? Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, we'll have worked with most of our partners in Germany and Europe will have worked with for 5+ years. But we of course are focusing on bringing on new brands and new areas of opportunity as well.
We've also talked about expansion. You yourself, one thing that you mentioned, I found it very interesting. Like you're in Australia, you've had a presence as a product without having the people on the ground, and now you're putting people on the ground in this market and in some other markets. I think some of our listeners and viewers, they also expand, right? So some of them want to expand into Germany. They're thinking of ways how to do that. If you had some tips or advice, like for companies that want to grow in Germany, expand to Germany, what would be those?
Yeah, I think what's really important is understanding those markets. That the point around privacy, the point around even things such as employment law are so important when you come into a new market, and especially into a market such as Germany. So I think those parts you should really understand before you enter. One area, and it sort of relates a little bit to having the insights up front, is trying to find really strong research houses that can provide you with detailed insights on what is actually going on in the market. What are the real market trends?
Consumer analysis.
It's really hard to sort of find something that really gives you the same level of detail as what you get once you're in market. So whether that's about doing recce's to market, setting up events, working with providers of those insights, but actually getting some of that on the ground feel, I think, is really important, because once you've made that investment to put people on the ground, you're of course in there for X number of years to make that return on investment. So the more intel you can build up in that first phase with a bit of a tried and tested model of how you gain those insights, the better you are once you go into that market entry phase.
How do you decide when the right moment is to put people on the ground?
I think there's a lot of factors. Some of them come down to the overall performance of the business and the appetite to take some risk and risk in exchange for expansion. So I think that's a really important one, is kind of when is the business ready? Probably from a technology perspective as well, how well will the technology scale into new markets? That's a bit easier now with cloud, but at the same time there's a lot of question marks around how much you need to tailor the offering to that specific market. Do you need to fully localize it in every single way? Of course, you've got to localize currency, but you have to localize language immediately, and that might be different for a retailer versus a publisher. So those are some considerations that I think you have to really take into account, is just when is the business ready, so that it can give it the time to be in a position to grow, because it does take time, and there are a lot of lessons along the way.
Yeah, Giles, you've kind of focused on the larger enterprises, that want to be even more successful with you guys. But some of our viewers are also smaller businesses that can really benefit from your insights. Mm-hmm. So we love to break it down to a couple of tips and suggestions for them to be successful in the ever more complicated world of online marketing. Do you have maybe some do's and don'ts for smaller businesses that might be at the beginning of the journey? They want to tap into online marketing. They want to diversify their product portfolio. They want to be successful through various channels. Do you have some do's and don'ts for them?
Yeah, I think you have to start relatively slowly and start with small budgets with strong sort of KPIs behind them and strong tracking. So I think to go into a new channel, you need to ensure that you're working with partners that are going to support you and understand that there are going to be gaps in the knowledge, and you need those partners to help you with that. You need to have that trust to know that they've got your back and they want to grow with you. And I think that the sort of best examples of those are the ones where you kind of grow from having monthly budgets of $2,000, and you can grow those into business that are delivering, that are generating, hundreds of thousands of GMS a month. And those examples are there because the channels do scale. Yeah. It's just that you've got to allow that to take time, not try to rush it. And I think maybe from a channel mix perspective, it is important to have diversity, but I think it's also really important to double down on the ones that are working, first, and then build from there. So try not to go too broad too early, I think, would be the message. And I think there is quite a lot of opportunity right now where we operate very much in a sort of CPC marketplace. And I think for mid-sized retailers, there's still quite a lot of opportunity there. If you get the cost of sale or the ROAS target right, you can still win a lot of traffic and placements off the bigger guys who are having to run their business in a different way. CPC budgets, publishers love them because it's basically they know they can do the calculation on what their return's going to be. So if you get it right, I think there's a lot of opportunity in that sector. And of course, over time, you can make those targets tougher as you become a bigger business. But to begin with, you need to cut through and break through from the sort of leading pack and find a niche that you can grow into.
Find your niche. Yeah. I love it. To summarize again, in order to get your goals fast, learn to go slow. The second thing was find out what works and double down on it. And the third thing was find your niche and understand the KPIs that will allow you to break through the bigger players.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe that's a nice way to wrap the conversation. Giles, I've really enjoyed this conversation, your expertise from the last 20 years, what you've done, and the last 5 years with Connexity, and how you add value to leading enterprises and connect them with the publisher side, and how you leverage data from all kinds of directions, given to especially taking into consideration that we're getting ready into a whole future with cookieless future. There are some challenges, there are some opportunities that will come along the way. Thank you so much for being with us. And do you have any finishing thoughts?
I think, we're, probably the finishing thought right now would be, it's still peak shopping period right now, so it's a pretty exciting time. There's snow outside on the streets of Berlin, so that's pretty exciting too. But I think, we're excited about what 2024 is going to bring, and there's a lot of new trends. There's a lot of, agility that's maybe come from the pandemic that is allowing businesses to move in slightly more nimble ways. And I think that becomes a real opportunity for lots of small, medium and large businesses to really find ways to engage consumers in different ways, which we're only seeing the sort of the tip of at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the E-commerce Germany News Podcast. If you did, make sure to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and follow us on our channels. Feel free to also recommend this podcast to your contacts and friends that may want to know more about e-commerce, digital marketing, and success stories. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and see you on the next episode.